Good evening. How y'all doing tonight? We're doing just great because we've been waiting on y'all out there. And welcome to Let's Talk Shop with Russ. Having a good time with the guys over here in the on the panel. We were talking back and forth about things, and kind of excited tonight. We're going to talk about scroll saws, something that I love to talk about, and I love to scroll. So I think we're going to have a pretty good evening. Thank y'all for being out there in the chat over there. I'm going to have to rely on, if we get questions for y'all on the panel, to keep an eye on Paul and a couple of y'all for the questions, because I don't know if I'm going to be able to. Well, I've got it over here, but once we get going, I don't know how much I'm going to be able to watch it and how good I'm going to be able to watch it. But about the only thing I need to say is don't forget that on Wednesday nights at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over on Twitch, I do the Scrolling with Russ. We've been having a very good turnout over there. I really appreciate all y'all guys that have been over there following me and watching me as we scroll. We've been turning out some good, cool projects for Halloween, and that's going to continue, but it's every Wednesday night on Twitch TV on my channel, Simwood. No, that one's Simply Wooden Creations. I think Twitter shortens it up to Simwood Creations, but over there on Twitch TV. Just if you're following me over on Facebook, look at my post over on Facebook, and you'll be able to go right over there to it. I'm also going to be putting a link up on to my website as soon as I can. Other than that, the Scroll Saw Artist Contest is continuing till the 31st of October. So you still have plenty of time to get your entry in. That leaves you a little over a week, about 10 or 12 days, not quite 2 weeks. I know it's got to be over a week because there's the 31st runs into the following week. So get a little over a week, 10 or 12 days. So plenty of time to build a clock and submit it. And don't forget to go over there and visit bearwood.com. And if you use the coupon code that's over on the link over in my Scroll Saw, on the Scroll Saw page, or the Scroll Saw Artist Challenge page over on my website, you get 20% off of all your items over $25 or more. So, or no, 10% off. I'm sorry, 10% off over $25 or more if you order over at Bearwood. So you can order your clock parts and your Pegasus scroll saw blades from them, and you get a discount at the same time. So there's plenty still time to order and get them in time to finish your clock project. Other than the Scroll Saw Artist Challenge, I have my sponsors, which are Devobal Technologies, web design, development, hosting. Visit devobal.com to do my website and several of the people on the panel's website. FastCap, innovative products for the professional woodworker. Go to fastcap.com. Rockler, 60 years of woodworking. Create with confidence. Visit rockler.com. And Bearwood Supply Company, your best choice for hard-to-find woodworking supplies. Go to bearwood.com. All these guys are great people. If you do me a favor, go over there and support them and order something from them. Buy something and tell them Russ sent you. How about that? So cool. We got through with that. I guess let's go down the panel real quick and introduce ourselves. So we'll start on my left and work my way to the right. And the first one on my left is Mr. Chris Ahearn.
Hey, I'm first tonight. Yay! Love being first. But, you know, you saved the best for last, so we'll see who that is. Anyways.
It's
hi, guys. Chris here.
Go ahead.
From the Old Crikey Workshop. You find me on Facebook and YouTube. I'm working on a Christmas video too, and maybe one before that. I know I said it every week, but you know what? Unlike a lot of you guys, I got a job that takes me out of here 50 hours a week. So we'll get some videos out, I promise. Back to you, Russ.
Cool. And then Miss Donna, how you doing tonight, Donna?
I'm good. Donna Presley, Donna's Wooden Art, YouTube, webpage, Facebook. Working on my clock.
Cool. Can't wait to see it. You said there were 496 holes you bored. That's a lot of holes.
Yes. It's taking a while, but I'm at the part. It's a couple more days, I'll be done.
Cool. Looking forward to seeing it. And then Javi.
Good evening, one and all. Javi from Javi's Woodshop, Javier Enzueta. You could find me on YouTube, Facebook, and I'm currently working on the upcoming 30-day Impossible Challenge for November. Thank you for having me, Russ.
I heard about that. Go ahead and explain to people about that. That's
well, really quick, it's a I call it the 30-day almost impossible challenge, like all my almost challenges. Almost impossible because very few people have actually succeeded. Do a project or a part of a project for all 30 days in November, video or photo once a day or 7 each week, and that's it. That's the challenge.
Cool. And what are the prizes?
The prizes at the moment is a plaque.
Hey,
and anyone wishes to contribute, I'll be happy to give them shout outs. But
all right. You've got my saw clock. I'll donate one of those.
I'll be happy to receive it. I'm doing it more than anything for to help all the YouTubers. You know, you get more videos out there, you get more content out there. Likewise, everybody, the more people share out there, I'm just trying to get more woodworking out there to the masses.
Right.
So I figure this is a good catalyst for it. Oh, that's gorgeous.
Is that the same one you had in my contest?
Yep, same one.
Wow, I like it.
It's the it's the Simply Wooden Creation Special. It says SWC, time to make some sawdust.
Very nice indeed. Thank you, Russ.
You're welcome. That's a combination of CNC and scroll saw. I use the CNC to cut out all the engraving the letters, and then I take an 1/8" bit and I have it go around and give me the lines for the.
See, we can all get along.
I know, and then it gives me the lines for the blades, and I come back with a scroll saw and cut it out because it's so much quicker to cut it out with a scroll saw, and it gives me the nice, tips on the ends and stuff. So.
Yep. Very nice.
All right, and then next is Mr. Jim Bashirs.
Sorry, I thought I was last. I'm all the way on.
Yeah, we discussed that the other day. Rob was talking about that. They're not in the same order on everybody's screen, so I had to go by my screen.
Well, I'm Jim Bashirs. I've got a small YouTube channel called Driveway Workshop, and thanks for having me on. I'm working on the clock challenge. So actually, I've got my first piece I've ever cut out on a bandsaw before. So this clock will be the first thing I've ever made. I got this off some guy's website. I don't know who it is, but I'd like to meet him one day, and talk to him because he's got some pretty cool plans on there. So thanks again, Russ, for having me on.
You're welcome. Yeah, he does have some pretty cool plans. I think. Yeah, I know him personally, so I'll be able to introduce you to him once.
The sad thing is I didn't recognize the project.
Oh, wait, maybe. Yeah, well, that one's stuck on the bandsaw, but that part, that's going to kill me, man. I don't know why you did that to new people.
And then next is Mr. John Shaffner.
Good evening, everyone. Excuse me. Getting all choked up here. You can find me on YouTube and Facebook, and I'm currently working on my clock for this challenge, Russ's challenge. And actually, I got the planning part of it done, and I'll be starting to cut tomorrow. So hopefully that'll be a winner. And that's about it. Back to you, Mr. Russ.
Cool. Yeah, John's been. He wasn't here last week. John's been sick, so you feeling a little bit better?
Yeah, I'm feeling much better. I have COPD, and I've been battling a strong bout of minor pneumonia. So we're getting better, but finally getting back out in the shop and whatnot. So we're all good.
Cool. All right, and then Mr. Paul.
Hey, I'm Paul Corliss from Paul's Messy Workshop. It's Paul's Messy Workshop on YouTube, Paul's Messy Workshop on Instagram, and paulsmessyworkshop.com. And I am also working on my clock. I think I have 2 more pieces to cut out, and then I have a load of sanding and assembly and all that kind of stuff. But by golly, I'm going to get that thing in by the end of the month.
Well, you got plenty of time. You got like I said, I think over 10 days.
But I'm retired. I lead a busy life.
Glad to have you here. Just before I get to you, Russ, I just wanted to point out Tommy G is out there in the chat. glad to see you out there, Tommy G. For those, he does YouTube videos, Tommy G's Woodshop, and or Tommy G's Workshop, I should say. But I haven't seen him in a while. He got into a real bad accident a few months ago. Actually, it's been a little longer than a few months, but he got into a real bad accident and really messed him up. So I'm glad to see you back out there in the chat, Tommy G. I hope you're doing better. And I've prayed for you a couple of times to make sure. I hope you are doing a lot better. So I'm glad you must be, because you're out there in the chat. So glad to see that. Also, and Tommy G's been on my show several times, and he's a real nice guy. Okay, so back to Mr. Russ Meadows.
Hey guys, Russ Meadows from the Rusty Nails Woodshop. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram under Rusty Nails with the Z Woodshop. I'm glad to see y'all. Been a while.
Glad you're here. And then Mr. Shane from Shane's Workshop. How's Shelly doing?
She's doing actually pretty good. She's laying down right now because I've been having her unbox all day today and put things away, so she's pretty tired. So she's laying down.
I bet.
But yeah, well, my name is Shane. Again, I am from Shane's Hobby Shop. If people who don't follow me, which I don't know why you wouldn't, but you would know that I'm actually have moved, and that's why my background looks a little different now. I'm no longer in a trailer house. I actually have me a home, a house. And hey, B, how you doing? It's a biscuit. And I got me a 2-car garage. And no, I'm not in the scroll saw challenge right now because my scroll saw is in the garage. Where at, I don't know, but I know it's in a box somewhere under a bunch of other boxes and other bags. So yeah, we still unpacking. You should have seen behind me here. Hi, how you doing? Yeah, good girl. Okay, I gotta talk. But yeah, we are unpacking, and but it's coming along just very slowly. But cool. Yeah, Shane Coffee Shop, come look us up, and yeah, I'm gonna take care of this girl.
But I'm glad and happy for both of y'all. I know y'all had posted that you were getting a home and had it had a garage and everything. That's going to be exciting. This guy actually had his shop set up in one of the bedrooms in the mobile home for a long time. So that's what he's
my spare bedroom. Yep.
Yep. And he built that fantastic looking end or side table for the bed or whatever out in that bedroom. That is like amazing. Out of pallet wood for the pallet wood.
And let's see, I don't know if you can see it now, but it's right there sitting on the corner.
Wow. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. And then last but not least.
Wait. I don't see my picture on it.
He needs his picture. Oh, and by the way, Chris, I got your card. It's sitting on my desk in there, and I will get it out in the mail. I was going to try to get it out in the mail today, but unfortunately, I couldn't make it till the post office at 11 o'clock. But I will get your gift card out to you.
I have your address. I know where you live. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. I've been so busy this past week with some family stuff. So
mailman will pick it up at your house.
Do what?
Put it out there. The mailman will pick it up at your house.
Yeah. But last but not least, my good friend, Mr. Steve Good. How are you doing tonight?
Hey, Russ. I'm doing fine. Hey, guys. I'm Steve Good. You can find me over at the Scroll Saw Workshop. Just Google me, and I'll be there. Thanks for having me, Russ.
You're welcome.
And also, hey, I do have one more thing. You think I would have a chance at Hobby's 30-day contest?
Yeah. I'm actually already planning, and I don't want to blow my secret right now, but I'm actually planning on how to win, and I know without a shadow of a doubt I can, and I will actually complete a project a day without any problem. So
I've been doing that for 10 years, Russ.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I was going to suggest to some people who are intimidated by a project a day, was if you're a scroll saw artist, just leave the project out there, do a letter a day, and maybe a few, 4 numbers, and there you're done.
Exactly. No fear setting your CNC to automatic either.
But what Steve is trying to say is he's been creating patterns every day of the week and distribute them out for free for like 10
I
years.
added it up the other day. I've averaged a pattern every 1.7 days for 10 and a half years.
Wow. That's incredible.
That's because we're Floridians and we're awesome.
That is all, that right there is an accomplishment. Let me tell you, that's an accomplishment. All right, guys. What we're going to talk about tonight is we're going to go. I think we're going to go first with just talking about the basics around scroll saws and talk about the difference between the cheap ones and the better ones real quick before we get into the anatomy part of it. But I do have some anatomy to show y'all tonight about the inner workings of some of these scroll saws. And when we talk about the cheaper versus the more expensive versus the mid-range, we're not just, we're not putting any one in particular down, but you have to look at it like this. Do you really want to compare a Kia to a Mercedes-Benz? That's what you're looking at when it comes down to it. There's no way that you can compare the two. They're both cars. They both look great. They both may run well, but one is a heck of a lot better than the other, and one costs a lot more than the other. But when we're talking about scroll saws, a lot of the problems with the cheaper scroll saws, which are the ones that come from like Harbor Freight, actually your Craftsman I think are pretty good, but some of these cheaper scroll saws that you'll run across your tradesmen, some of the problems they entail are harder to change the blade is number one. Number two, vibration. That's one of the biggest killers right there. And then also some of your cheaper or smaller scroll saws, the table's not all that big. You have a very small table on it. So when you're starting to talk about those three things, and if you have ever cut, and which I have, because I've been cutting on a scroll saw for 35 years. So if you've ever cut on a scroll saw that is older, and then you move up to one, like let's say you go from a Craftsman to the DeWalt 788 or the Delta, once you cut on it, you'll notice the difference between night and day, and you'll go like, wow, why did I not move up to this thing years and years and years ago? And it makes that big of a difference. Now, I've been teaching classes at Rockler up in Orlando, and a lot of these people are coming in and they're using their cheaper saws, and they come in, and that's what we have for our classes. This is the DeWalt 788. And once they start using them, in the first few months of me teaching classes, I sold 6 scroll saws, and within 90 days, I think it was. And the managers had told me that I think that was more scroll saws than they've sold, and they didn't know how long. So just them using it and being able to work on it, they could tell the difference and like the saw a lot more and a lot better. Now, I know there's some of the mid-price saws that are out there that are not bad. Like, for instance, the last couple of years ago, Steve, you gave away a porta cable on the for the Scroll Saw Artist Challenge. That's not a bad little saw, is it?
No, it's not too bad. The blade change is a little more difficult, but other than that, the blade goes up and down, and that's the main thing. Now, you're going to wear it out. The biggest thing is if you try to become even a semi-production cutter where you're going to be cutting every day, then you'll wear those machines out really quickly. But if you can get comfortable with changing the blade on them, and you can get the vibration down to where it's manageable, for the most part, you can do just about any project out there.
Right. Anybody else? I know that a few of you, Al's not here tonight. Al Forte just got him a brand new DW788. So I know Jim Bashir's. What are you cutting on?
Sorry about that. I've got a Delta, one of the larger ones. It's like the same or real similar to the DeWalt that you've got, that same size, 20-inch. But it's really smooth. It doesn't vibrate at all, and doesn't hardly make any noise.
Right.
It's actually right here. I can show you. I think if I can get the camera over there.
Yes, that's the same.
That's it right there.
Yeah, that's basically the same saw as the DW788.
You can see the other part of my
yeah, they're all
still on there.
They changed the back end of it. Looks a little bit different than the 788, where the motor and housing is at the back end. But other than that, it's the same exact saw as the DeWalt 788. Now,
I really like it. So,
what were you using before that?
I had my dad's old Delta, but the top blade holder cracked on it, and I couldn't find one anywhere. I couldn't find any aftermarket part to do it with or anything.
Did you notice a big difference once you changed over to the new one? How did you go like, wow, this thing cuts a lot better?
Oh no, it was only night and day difference. It was completely. It was like going from an old beat up car that was out of balance and wobbled all the time when you drove it to a Mercedes. It's just fantastic.
Yeah. And and I know a lot of people go like, they can't afford, and I understand that. Trust me. When I started out in this journey years and years ago, the first scroll saw I ever owned was a Craftsman. And I've told the story before. I was walking through Sears and I had my daughter with me, and it was around 1980 or 81. And I saw a scroll saw. I had no clue as to what it was at that time. I'd been in building houses with my father, but I had no clue as to what a scroll saw was. And the guy demonstrated it for me, fell in love with it, took one home, and haven't looked. Now, that was pin blades. That was not even pinless. That was an old pin blade scroll saw. So I never looked back. I've been using it ever since. And or not that one, but scrolling ever since. So I've always owned one way or another. I've owned the scroll saw and scrolled throughout the years.
Russ, what you just mentioned there, I think is probably, if you're going to start with an entry-level machine, you do want to do your absolute best to get a machine that will accept plane and blades. That's probably the biggest key of any of the features you want to look for. It's really important.
Yeah. I've got one over here tonight, the Tradesman, that I've had for years and years and years. And that one used pinned blades. And the problem with pinned blades is that they cut great, don't get me wrong, but when you're starting to talk about fretwork and you're talking about inner holes in fretwork, you're limited to the size of the work that you can do, the small holes that you can do, because the pins in a pin and blade usually take about 1/8 of an inch in diameter hole.
Plus the blades themselves are bigger too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, Russ, can I interrupt for just a second?
Sure.
Jeff Robinson out in the chat says, Steve, could you please talk about the Frank Pisgatti blade retouching kit when you use cheaper scroll saws like the Craftsman and Harbor Freight?
Yeah, the gentleman he's talking about, let's see if I can bring up his website here real quick. Go ahead. Trying to find it real quick. If I can share it with you guys. There it is. It's Pogazzi's Design, P-O-Z-S-G-A-I-S Design. And he sells several different accessories for the scroll saw, but one thing he sells are conversion kits that will take most, if not all, of the 16-inch scroll saws out there, the entry-level pin-in only scroll saws. And there's a little conversion kit that you can actually attach to those saws to where they'll take pin-in blades. Now, they're not the ideal solution. They do come with their share of problems also, but it's still worthwhile to take a machine and do that conversion on it. The cost is not extreme, and if you don't have it in your budget to move up to a pinless machine, then that will. I've seen people take the Harbor Freight scroll saw, which is, I think it usually sells for right at $100, and they put that conversion kit on it, and they're actually able to turn out some pretty nice projects. Now, there's a little bit of frustration there because those conversion kits are still difficult to install the blades into. It's not easy. They tend to want to, especially on the bottom, when you reach under there to connect the bottom blade, the clamp tends to want to pivot back and forth on you. And I don't try to hold my hand up here so you can see, but I take my middle finger and I put it behind the clamp, underneath the table, right? I put my middle finger behind the clamp, and that keeps it from pivoting back and forward. And then I can hold the rest of it with the other finger. So you always want to have something behind that clamp to keep it from pivoting on you. And that is kind of the best way I've found to get used to those less expensive clamps.
Yes, I had somebody that was asking me earlier, and I got to get with you about that and give them that information if they're on here tonight. That was wanting to see if they could find something for their saw.
I just put the link to, and I have no idea if I'm saying this gentleman's name right. I've never talked to him other than email, but we'll call it Pogazzi, or somebody pronounced that. I have no idea how to pronounce that, but I just put his link here in the chat.
Okay. Cool. Back to what you were talking about, the size of the blades. So yes, this is, now this is not a pin blade, but this is a the size of a pin blade. This is your these are like Craftsman's, and then this is like a number 3. Yeah, a number 3, and that's a big blade as far as scroll saws are concerned right now. But look at the size of the difference. Look at the teeth on that monster. That's like a bandsaw blade. So look at the difference in that. I mean, just a huge amount of difference. And I do have some pin blades. I just didn't pull them out tonight. But this is the size of a pin blade. Now, what I used to do to make the hole a little bit smaller was I used to knock the top pin out. I found out you could knock that top pin out and then put it through the wood and then put the pin back in and then hook it back in. Lose that pin and you're kind of out of business. You have to change the blades. But
I did the same thing with Harbor Freight's scroll saw. When I first started out, I did the set. I got tired of having those big holes, so I pushed one through one day, and then I broke the pin, broke it loose. And so I pulled it out, and I said, well, heck, can I stick it back in? I could, so I stuck it back up in there and used it that way.
Yeah.
And stuff. So I know what you mean.
But
Harbor Freight got adapters that come with it.
Yeah, they have the adapters.
But once you want to, like in my case, when you break one of those things and the blade flies off into Never Never Land, you can't find it anymore. Harbor Freight does not sell those adapters.
Yes.
You can't get them from them.
You have to buy a new saw.
You're at the point where you either pay for a new saw or do like I did, get on like that and buy a saw. That's what I did. I bought a D-Wall.
Right.
If you think about it, though, the adapter is going to cost you $20 or $25, and the saw only costs $100. So,
yeah.
You know.
You were talking about night and day difference. That's what it was for me when after the blade and it went flying. I never found it. I took the saw and put it to the street.
But that's what. Right. That's what we're basically talking about here is when we're talking about the cheaper saws against the more expensive saws that work a little bit better. And trust me, there ain't none of us out here getting paid for telling you that the DeWalt 788 is better than a Harbor Freight. So it's just from our experience that we ourselves have went through that progression of a cheaper saw and worked our way up to now that we can afford a little bit better saw. And if let's say, I will tell you this one thing. Let's say that you have the money ready right now to be able to afford like a cheaper saw for, let's say, $150 or whatever. I see all of these DeWalts with stands and lights coming on sale. They just had the sale the other day for $299.
Yeah.
And so just wait a few more weeks or a month or so and save your money and move up that next little step. And let me tell you, even the Delta that Jim's got, I think that's a 490 or 4690 or something. That's a weird model number. I don't remember the exact model number, but either one of those saws, right now, or I don't think the sale's on right now. Grizzly had the DeWalt 788 with the stand and the light for $299. And the shipping was only like $80. I mean, that's inexpensive right there. That's not that bad at all. So, all right. So now when we're talking about, we're going to get down to some of the anatomy of these saws and how they actually work. And I've got some, basically most of your modern saws, and I had to make sure I wasn't saying this wrong when I talked to Steve Good, but most of our saws that we're using nowadays, including the Tradesman that I have over here, the Craftsman, the Delta, and the DeWalt, fall into two categories. They either are the parallel arm system or the parallel link system. That's how they fall into those two categories. There are others out there. There's the C-arm and a few others that we have or that are out there. But most of the saws that we deal with that we can buy, that like your Porta cables, your Harbor Freights and stuff like the Craftsman and stuff, or fall into those categories. Actually, the Tradesman that I have here that I'm fixing to bring over and the Craftsman are the parallel arm system. they're a little bit different than DeWalt and the Excalibur. So let me get this over here, move my stool out of the way.
Hey, Russ, while you're doing that, I just went ahead and got on the Grizzly's website, and the DeWalt 788 is still on sale for $399.95.
Wow. See, that's a good deal.
That's the stand and the scroll saw with the light that comes with it.
That's a good deal. All right, guys. This is an old tradesman that I've had for years and years and years and years. And matter of fact, I looked it up. I think this was made either late 90s. The model started coming out in the late 90s or early 2000s. It's a variable speed saw. It uses the pinned-in blades, and what you do is just basically push this down and hook that up into there. And it also uses a rear-mounted tension. And what the difference is that with a parallel link system, the parallel link system. No, this is the parallel arm system. I'm sorry. I want to get this straight. This is the parallel arm system. And this is these arms. Here, let me go turn it this way. You can see this arm coming down here in a block is a solid arm, so to speak. Yes, they have pivot points and bearings in here, but they move together up and down. And they're running on these pivot points right here. And how we can see that is where the motor is connected right here. Now this is the motor on the parallel link, no, I'm gonna get this right, parallel arm system. So as this motor rotates, see if I can show you this. As this motor rotates, it is pushing that arm up and down along with the motor. But it's also, as it's moving this arm, it's pushing it up in the back, which is pivoting this arm down. So that's how that is working. And now the biggest way you can tell the difference between the parallel arm system and the parallel link system is on the parallel arm system, your motors sit up toward the front. And on the DeWalt and the Deltas and the Excaliburs, the motor sits back here toward the back. That's a real quick recognition.
Hey, Russ.
Yes.
Real quick, just in case somebody wants to look, I've got a diagram of the parallel swing arm saw on my screen. If you click on me, and then when you get to the parallel link, I can show a diagram of that also.
All right. Yeah, just leave that locked up there. See what I'm talking about? And that shows there on the back, you'll see where the tension arm is. That's how you set up the tension, is you actually squeeze these two arms together to separate the front part where the blade is to add the tension.
Was that pretty much the standard years ago?
See, if you go back into the 40s and the 50s, everything was pretty much typically the C arm drive. Let me go up and show you that. That's this right here. Right. And the reason we moved away from this is, look, when this goes up and down, if you can imagine it's pivoting on this single point right here, it's a very aggressive cut because the blade is swinging through a range of motion from front to back. So you had all kinds of problems with not being able to do tight fret work. And plus, this system tended to break blades much easier. And that's how we got from the C arm, which was pretty typical back in the 40s and 50s. And even up into the 60s, there were still some of them out there. But then when they came to this system, you can see it actually pivots on 2 points. And the movement of the blade is more vertical than it is with the C arm, which gives you a lot of front to back movement. Now these machines, the parallel arm saws still have some front to back movement, just because you can see, when this blade's in its center position, it's here. And when it's in its up position, it's here. And of course, when it's in its down position, it's over there too. So there is some front to back movement on the parallel arm. And those are typically not, that particular movement is not adjustable on the parallel arm scroll saws.
Correct. And like I said, you can see this here. That's in the diagram, right? I decided not to tear this thing apart because I probably wouldn't get it back together. That's a joke, because I took the Delta apart earlier in my shows, and it's still not back together, but I decided I was going to use it for parts. So, but you can see what I'm saying is how this automatically, let me move this out of the way so you can see this a little bit better. How this automatically moves. They move together when I'm moving this motor. I know with my hands. So every time this makes a full rotation, it pulls it up and back. This tray, here's the tension that we were talking about. This is actually, as you tighten this up, is actually squeezing these two bars in the back together, and which is separating the two bars in the front for the tension. And how you get the actual tension on it is right there.
Russ and Steve, what about, I've got a, I mean, I've never scroll sawed, but back in my younger years, I have a Craftsman circa 1980. I mean, really cheesy. You can't, it doesn't really qualify as a scroll saw, except it takes a scroll saw blade. It had that little springy thing with the pins.
Yeah, it looks like, it's called a spring tension scroll saw. If you look at my screen again, you'll see this. And there were some advantages to that particular machine in that if you notice on this with the spring, the up and down movement of the blade is totally vertical. There is no run out on the blade front to back. So it was a very, or a fairly, you could do fairly tight fretwork with it, but it had other problems besides that. So a lot of wear components in there that didn't last very long. And for whatever reason, well, not for whatever reason, if you look at the design of this and you think it through, the tension on the blade actually changes depending on if that spring is loaded or unloaded. So when the blade comes down by the motor and you pull on that spring, the blade has more tension than when the motor's at its up cycle and the spring is decompressed, de-stretched out, whatever you want to call it. And because of that varying tension on the blade or stress on the blades tended to break a lot. So the C-arm broke the blades because there was so much front to back run out on them. And that was a problem. And on this one, it broke because the tension would go from tight to less tight. It's kind of crazy, but that's a fairly typical machine still in Japan. If you travel to Japan, most of the scroll saws over there are still spring arm saws.
If you go into an industrial environment, like somebody has a high volume wood shop, what kind of what structure is the saw going to be?
The really big machines that we don't see on the market use a system similar to what you're seeing down here. It's called an oscillating band scroll saw, and this is the way Ernie Mellon designed his Eclipse scroll saw, and the reason it had so many people that loved it. If you look at how this works, this circle right here, or this black line, is actually a belt, and the belt is attached to the blade right here. So if you look at this, as this belt goes this direction and then back this direction, the blade goes typically straight up and down. It also eliminated the problem with the spring giving you more or less tension because it's a solid belt that goes all the way around. So when you see some of these machines that are like 8 foot tall and the table's 4 foot by 4 foot, this is typically how they're designed. This is probably the ultimate design of a scroll saw in most people's opinion, because it eliminates all the blade breaking issues of the C-arm and the spring arm, but it also gives you a very vertical cut, which means it's not an aggressive cut, but it's very precise. And there's no machines on the market currently that use this system for everyday users, unless you can find a used Eclipse.
Right. Now you see why I have Steve Good on here tonight. Because Dave Gatton said he has some cool diagrams, cool diagrams, good stuff. Yeah. Now you see why I have him on here. I was like, yeah, if I'm going to talk about scroll saws, that's the man I want to have with me.
Well, actually, the guy that knows more than anybody is Rick Hutchinson. But
yeah. But this one still has the old. Now it broke today. The thing is so old that this is actually, there's actually a tube inside of this. It just shattered again. So this goes up here. So it had a actual blower on it. This went up here, and then this goes over to here. Look at that. It's just shattering. But it went over down and fed. So that's actually just It hasn't been used. It still works. I mean, I can plug it in. It'll still run without any problem. So
you know what, Russ? When people put the adapter kit for the pin end blades on, or the plain end blades on that machine, and get it bolted down and put a rubber pad between the stand that you put it on and that machine, it actually was not that bad of a machine.
Yeah, this tradesman saw with the pin end blades does not have a lot of vibration.
Right.
Matter of fact, I can. I was always shocked as to the least amount of vibration that this saw had. In all sincerity, and I used this saw for years and years.
And there's something to be said for the fact that it's still running.
Yeah. Yep, I used this saw for years and years. Let me get over here and first let me make sure I got it off.
Anyone want to bet it doesn't fire up since we're live?
Yeah. But you can see it's sitting here on this table, and that's high. This is wide open. It's running about let's say at 1800 RPM is what I got it set on.
See, that's not bad. That's a usable machine.
Do what?
That is a usable machine.
Yes.
I mean, you could cut fine fretwork with that, assuming you could get the blade through the interior holes.
It'll cut.
So that's going to be one of Russ's next giveaways, by the way.
I pushed it a little.
Or maybe not.
Or not.
Hey, you scroll saw just like I do.
Yep. But yeah, but another problem with it, it has such a small table too.
Right.
I mean, this is really, really small if you want to compare it to like.
And he had that problem there because he was trying to push too hard. That wasn't really the machine's fault.
Pushing way too hard on it. Here, I won't get it, but anyway, if you compare that to the DeWalt 788, that's a big difference. Yes, I was pushing way too hard, way too fast for this saw because I'm so used to using this 788 that I wasn't giving it a chance. But anyway, so that is this, and then the next progression up that I had after all these years, which was still to me another great scroll saw. Was this Craftsman. I used this one for years.
Got a better table on it.
Huh?
It's got a better table on it.
Yeah, a little bit bigger table. I like that part. And your tension is moved toward the front. Up here. How you set your tension. You had variable speed, which was up here also. The only problem with it even though it used pinless blades, you had to use a Allen wrench, which I've lost over the years, the actual Allen wrench. It was a little T-handled Allen wrench that went in here. So you had to use an Allen wrench to change for blade change.
And you guys see how that clamp is moving back and forth when he touches it?
That's what he was talking about.
A pain in the butt.
Right.
That's just the top's not so bad, but on the bottom it's hard.
Right. That's what he's talking about.
That's what broke on my dad's. I couldn't find it.
But if you'll notice on this one also, the motor is where? Toward the front. So this one is the parallel arm system right here. Now, they were able to change it, and somehow they changed it, and I'm not sure, to be able to put the tension toward the front here, which was a very, very nice addition, and it works very, very well. And this one goes up to, I think, 1600 RPM, and how you pull it on. And what was really cool about it was this was not only a blower, but there's a LED light in it.
And Russ, that was actually the second most sold saw ever.
Yeah, this was a great saw. And what I have done here is I went ahead and there was one bolt holding this in so that I could show you all a little bit better. And I took it out so we could remove this.
We get nervous when Russell takes saws apart.
Do what?
We get nervous when you start taking saws apart.
But once again, you can see how the motor is set in here, the same way with that diagram, and how it works toward the front. See if I can get this out of the way. How it works toward the front. Moving this arm up and down. I don't think I can rotate this. Well, yeah, I can. There you go. See how they're working together? And this one actually has counterweights on it. You can't, I don't know if y'all can see that or not. Let me see if I can flip it over upside down. This actually has counterweights, so it reminds me of the crankshaft in your automobile. Moving your piston, it actually has counterweights to help that rotate and swing around. I thought that was pretty ingenious.
They were also put there to reduce vibration.
Vibration, yep. So this was this all still works. My granddaughter used this saw, and what happened was I was going to fix the Delta that I had that broke, and it had a bearing go bad in the back end, and I was going to give it to her, and she, whenever I bought the DeWalt 788 over here, I had this sitting over here, and she used to come over during the summertime. Here, let me put up where y'all can see me, y'all can talk to me. She used to come over during the summertime and scroll. I used to pick her up from school, and she'd come over and spend the afternoon because her mom and dad worked and weren't home. And she'd come over here and sit on on this saw and scroll. And then when I moved up to the 788, she was like, well, what are you doing with that saw, Papa? And I'm like, nothing really. She goes, well, if I can set up over at the house in my dad's shed, can I have it? And I said, yeah, you can use it. Go ahead and take it. I said, I'm not going to give it to you because I might want it back, but you can use it. And so she scrolled on this thing, kept on scrolling on it for years. So up until the last, I'd say, year, she ended up getting married, and now she's pregnant with my great-grandchild, my first great-grandchild, by the way. And so she finally just is not using it anymore. So I went and picked it up and brought it. One of the reasons was so I could show y'all as we talked about these scroll saws. But this thing I can put the blade in it and fire it right off and scroll on it right now. And I really like this saw. This was like a really nice saw now. But the difference between this stepping up over to the 788 was, wow, still a big difference. The table was better. It didn't have as much vibration. It just cut a lot better. But very nice little saw. And like I said, one of the things, I'm not going to take it apart by no means, but I wanted to show was how the arms worked and how the tension worked on this. You say this was the second?
If you look at I don't know, I'm not screen sharing right now, but the first was also a Craftsman. It was their cheaper model. That one that you're looking at I think they called that the professional series or something like that.
Right.
But they had one below it that was actually, because it was Sears.
Would it happen to be this one here? I'm screen sharing the 5722-47202.
No,
this is the cheesy one I have with the little attachment for the Dremel on the side and the stamped plate. Like I said, hardly a scroll saw.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
The one that I've got on my screen now is actually the second version of the one they sold the most of. There was actually a version even before this one, but it looked real similar. It didn't have the dust port on it, I don't think.
That one reminds me of the Tradesman.
Yeah, a lot like it.
Yeah,
Matter of fact,
a lot like
they may have been made by the same company.
See the little T-handle Allen wrench on the back? That's the same thing my Tradesman had.
Right.
They still sell that scroll saw today.
Yeah, it looks a little different from this, but yeah.
Yep, they still sell that today.
And that machine did have quite a bit of vibration. It had a sweet spot. You had to get it to where it was just right.
Yep, you had to get the RPMs at just the right space, and then it would be fine. Okay, so that's what we've progressed from. Oh wow, look at that! That's pretty cool. I can get it to rotate around. Pretty cool. So, and like I said, if I plug this in and put a blade in it, this one would also work, but I have to put the table and everything back on and then hook the blade up, and I don't want to go through that hassle right now. So, but that was this, another progression, and I've kept these saws and kept them in good shape. Now I've let the cast iron table on that old tradesman rust a little bit, but then we come up to a little bit different. And yes, guys, you are definitely going to be able to see the internal workings of this saw.
Oh my God.
Wow.
That's a poor saw.
This is the internal workings of the Delta, which is exactly like the DeWalt 788. So actually this piece here, goes across here, and there's a bracket that goes in here that bolts, and for this to sit like this, how this is bolted on down here. But I wanted to show you the difference is that how the on this is how the motor, let me swing this around, the motor on this is mounted toward the back of the machine. And then also the difference is as to where it is hooked to, instead of being up here on the front of the arm. This one is actually the parallel link system. And as the motor rotates, you can see it on the bottom one.
And the primary difference, or the primary reason for that design, was to reduce vibration. That was their number one goal, which it did.
Yep.
But it didn't change the precision of the saw. It's still a fairly aggressive
Let me lock on
saw.
Steve real quick. Go ahead and keep that up there for a few minutes. This is what we're talking about. There's the schematic that he's showing. And as those arms move back and forth, and they don't move very much, as when I'll show you in just a second, it's a very small amount of movement. And actually the lift on this is only 3/4 of an inch. That's the cut path on that.
And that's how they reduce the vibration, is actually the movement of these upper and lower arms moving front to back like that actually suppress the vibration, and then the separate link right here is what gave you the up and down motion. So they had a lot less mass moving, which helped the vibration.
Right. Have y'all been watching over there on the chat? I hope y'all have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
A lot of talk about different saws people have. And
Yep.
Dave Gatton's wondering when you're going to get that put back together, because he remembers when you took it apart.
I've decided I'm going to go ahead and keep this one apart and just keep it for the bearing went out on the back end of this thing and it caused a lot of vibration. I'm decided I'm just going to keep it apart and use it for parts for my 788 over there. There's no use in, my granddaughter's not going to use it. She's raising children and moved on in her life. And so if the 788 breaks down, I've got a whole assortment of parts here that I can use to fix it with. So,
and that is the number one, after the clamps, the number one failure point is the bearings.
Yep. But yeah, go back to lock on me again. And you can see this. I mean, I was actually shocked when I took this thing apart, is right here. Notice this right here. That's it, guys. That's all the movement that thing has to move that. And then you can watch this. That's 3/4 of an inch is all it's moving. And then this is your circuit board that actually controls your variable speed down here that goes over to the motor and controls the motor. And then your switch and everything sits actually up here. This is your tension rod that goes through here that applies tension. See if I can get this. That applies tension to the back. That's how it applies tension. But I just thought this was fascinating when I took this apart to see. Actually, everything about the top mechanism and the bottom mechanism are exactly alike. This is your bellows for the blower that sits on top. But if you'll look, let me turn this up where you can see. The arm is exactly the same on the bottom. It has this little notch in it for this bellows to hook to. So these are actually interchangeable, totally 100%. This arm here is the same. The blade holder itself is the same. Everything is identical. These arms are the same going back. Everything, top and bottom, is exactly the same.
And they do break sometimes.
Yes. Yeah, they do. But this was a good saw. Don't get me wrong. Just that bearing went out and started having a lot of vibration and made a lot of noise. And I decided I was in the middle of some projects that I had sold and I had to have them done. And I don't know if I've told you all the story about this or not, but and so I needed a saw like bad now. And I started to go pick up that Craftsman for my granddaughter. And I looked on the Craigslist. And lo and behold, there was a 788. The guy said he was selling it. And it was his grandfather's or his father's. And he had passed and he had only used it maybe 10 or 12 times. And he was selling it for $200 bucks with the stand, everything together for $200. And I'm like, there's no way this saw is going to be there if I call. So he was down in Sarasota, which is about a 2-hour drive from me. And I called him up and said, hey, you still got that yellow saw? And he goes, yeah, it's still sitting here. And I said, you're kidding. He goes, no, he said, you're the only person that's called about it. And I said, really? And I said, well, I need that saw now. And he goes, okay. And I said, I'm about 2 hours away and I'm on my way and I'm bringing cash. So I drove straight down to Sarasota, gave him the cash for this saw that's sitting right here today that I'm using, and drove straight back and finished those projects and sold them. So that's how I ended up with that saw. And then this one that I just finally started making that so much noise and got so much vibration, I just didn't use it anymore. But those are your inner workings of your main saws that you have, that they're out there nowadays. This Delta saw, now if you'll notice the difference between this one and the one that Jim has now, they've changed, the Delta changed a little bit, the back end of the way it looks from the 788. They have a different look, but basically they're still the same internal working, still the same. These parts are totally 100% exchangeable. If I took the 788 apart, it looked exactly like this on the inside. Everything, the difference on these two is the paint. This was painted gray and that was painted yellow. Now Jim's is a little bit different. All the internal working parts will fit from one saw to another, but his case is a little bit different, the way designed it on the back end of the new.
Russ, actually some of the parts between the Delta and the DeWalt are not interchangeable. They're actually
on the new ones, Steve?
Yeah, the bearings are a little bit different. I mean, it's the same style, but it actually uses different parts. So don't order for the right machine if you order those parts.
Okay, I did not know that on the new ones. What parts is it? Are even the bearing?
The size of the bearings and the inner race of the bearings is a little different size.
Oh, okay.
Why they did that, I have no idea. Probably just what they had on the shelf.
Yeah, I don't know why they changed it either. So
it's all owned by the same company too.
Yeah. well, one of the parts of the story of that is that originally Delta and DeWalt was making the same ones, and the company decided they didn't want Delta to make the saw anymore for a while. So then they revamped it a little bit and changed it and come back with the new one. So I never understood that either.
You know, Russ, in the job I've got, I'll go to like what looks like a generic packaging plant or a filling plant or something like that, and they'll bring in somebody's, X company's boxes and bottles and cans or whatever, fill them up with a product, and then another company's comes through and they put the same exact thing in there, and out it goes on a semi to be sold at a store. So, interchangeability on these things wouldn't surprise me a bit anymore.
Yeah, maybe that's one of the reasons they did it, is because they didn't want to. They didn't want the parts to be so interchangeable, so to speak, because Stanley Black & Decker owns them.
Right.
Yeah, so maybe that's one of the reasons they did that, is they were saying like, hey, hold on, let's change this up a little bit so they're not using. I will tell y'all something that I have found out, and that is if you need parts for the Delta or the 788 or some of these other saws that I have here, replacement parts online, they have more parts than I've ever seen in my entire life. Their prices when I wanted to order bearings for this, they were actually cheaper through replacement parts than they were through DeWalt or Delta. So I found that out myself. So, and plus they have, and they're just as reliable. Matter of fact, one of my other saws, might have been this one. Yeah, I think it was this one that the bearings went out on one of these, either the upper or the lower arm on this one to begin with, and I had to replace that. And so this is not really that hard to get apart and replace, but I had to replace that, and that's what I ordered from E-Replacement Parts. And
the only caveat with them, Russ, just one thing. I use them all the time also, but there is one caveat, and that is that if you order the thumb screw, you won't get the same thumb screw every time. And you will occasionally get one that does not have the pivot bearing in the tip of the thumb screw, which is a problem.
Yes.
So,
do y'all know what he's talking about there? I think I have one. If not, I'll go take it off my other saw. Here, let me get it off my saw here.
And while we wait, Steve will sing for us.
Okay, what he's talking about here is on the tip end of some of these holders, or blaze holders, is this point right here actually pivots. It's actually a pin that goes inside there. You see that? And this rotates so that when you tighten it, the whole thing is not twisting your blade. And so when you order, sometimes you order these through E-Replacement Parts, they will send you this, but it'll be solid. It won't have that pin, and it will not rotate at the end. And that's not a good thing.
yeah, you'll get what we call hockey sticks.
Yep. Yeah, because it can't rotate. See, I'm actually holding the end of this very tight with my finger, but I'm actually able to rotate this because this is actually, it's coming out there. I was hoping it would. Ah. Yep.
And you can order just the tips.
Yep. So
Why
that's,
do they call it a hockey stick?
Because the blade comes out looking like a hockey stick. It actually
okay.
pivots, it bends
Literally
the
a hockey
blade.
stick. Okay.
yeah, when you're tightening, when the blade's going on this and you're tightening this down, if that doesn't pivot, it'll cause the bottom of the blade to kick out and actually look like a hockey stick.
And those little tips can freeze up. It happens a lot. They'll freeze up inside the race, and if you start getting hockey sticks, it's time to get a new one.
Yep. I pull mine out every once in a while and put a little grease on it. That's the reason that thing pops out so easy.
Yeah.
I'll pull it out. Matter of fact, if I rub my fingers on it, it's got a little grease in it, so it doesn't hurt to pull it out every once in a while and put some grease on it.
And they also just wear out the surface, and you'll start getting slipping of the blade. Yep. And what happens on all of these machines that use that style is people will let those things get too worn out, and what they'll start doing is over tightening the clamp, and then you'll get this situation, which I don't know if I'm going to be able to show you, but this is the clamp, and right here are where the set screw and the thumb screw go through, and this aluminum extrusion right here will splay apart. So then when you put the set screw and the thumb screw back in it, they won't meet at a perfect angle. They'll be splayed apart, and you'll start getting blade slipping, and you'll think that you just need to keep making it tighter, but you don't. You need to replace this and the set screw and the thumb screw. You can usually see this once you get the two set screws in there. If you look in there, you'll see a gap towards the front of the two set screws. And if you see that gap, the clamp is worn out, and you can just order just this clamp. And that's on all these machines he's talking about right now. Well, except for the Excalibur, it has a different style clamp. But the DeWalt and the Delta both use the same style clamp.
Yeah, the Excalibur, I don't know that I could get it over here. I might be able to get it over here to show y'all. But anyway, I just took this bolt that holds this in here with the race, and this whole thing right here will actually pull out, and that's what. And actually what is in here is these are needle bearings.
Right.
That are all down in there, and this is what he's talking about, the race that sits inside of the needle bearings. Those are all, you can see, oh, that's a good shot right there. See them down in there? Yeah. And this is the race that goes through there. And I mean, if you want your saw to last a long, long, long time, and you're fairly, how do I want to put it? Good
mechanically inclined.
There you go, mechanically inclined. It would behoove you to take this the front ends of these off and grease them up. And I would say at least once a year, especially if you're using it a lot for production. It'll make these things last a whole heck of a lot longer. And if you ask what grease I use, just regular. I went and bought some synthetic wheel bearing grease for your cars, and that's what I've been using on them. I just coat them with wheel bearing grease and put them back together and keep right on going. So, but that's your front end. This is the what Steve was holding up. This is where this actually goes in here, and this is your front blade holder and what it looks like.
And another typical problem, just while we're sitting there looking at it, you want the set screw that's on the left and the thumb screw that's on the right, or vice versa. You want those to meet exactly in the middle. And sometimes you'll see people that are breaking blades, and it's because they've got the upper and the lower clamp, the set screw starting to back out. So you've got the blade actually sitting in there at a slight angle, and that angle puts stress right where the blade attaches to the clamp, and you'll be breaking blades a lot. Another little tip there to watch out for.
Russ, we had a question from the chat. Florence Leedy was asking you if there was anything else on a DeWalt 7088 you'd recommend doing preventive maintenance on.
If you're mechanically inclined, you can grease all these bearings back here in the back end too.
Yeah, don't do it.
The front end is not too
roll the dice, huh?
Yeah, the front end's not too hard to get to.
Right.
It's fairly simple, and it's very easy. And if you can take the top part of it apart, you can take the bottom part apart because they're exactly the same. Matter of fact, only take one apart at a time. Do the top first, and you can look at the bottom when you put it back together and see how it goes back together. And then do the bottom. I used to do that years ago when we were doing, remember the old brake shoes instead of discs?
Mm-hmm.
I would always take one side apart first and replace the shoes. So if I get where the springs go, I could go to the other side and figure out where the springs went. So that's basically what. And
those bearings are actually rated for the lifetime of the machine. What happens is those machines are typically sold to what I call weekend scrollers or once a month scrollers, and they'll never fail on those people. They only fail if you use them a lot.
Yeah. So if you're just using this thing, typically like on weekends and stuff, oh yeah, it'll last you forever. It's production.
I've still got a Type 1 DeWalt that I've had for probably 15 years or more. It's still on the original bearings.
Yeah, it's production that will actually be the we'll take it out, in other words. But yes, I have the EX30 over here, the Excalibur. Give me a second. I'll see if that's a big saw. Let me see.
While he's doing that, the other thing is never leave the tension on your scroll saw when you walk away from it. That will leave the stress on those arms also. Just flip the tension lever over and leave it loose. That'll make your bearings last longer, and those front pivots also.
Good advice.
Yeah, that's the first I've ever heard that.
Yeah.
Something I'll add to that, talk about maintenance. If you don't use a foot pedal and you use the speed control and the on-off switch on top, take that apart every once in a while and blow it out. Sawdust accumulates in there, and next thing you know, you'll burn it up and you have to replace it.
And the best advice on that is to get a foot switch and tape that switch over. Just put tape all over so you can't get any dust in there. You should have a foot switch anyway.
Yeah, that's what I did to mine.
Well, I'll say I've had mine DW78 and 788 now for I think 11 years. It's a Type 2 saw. Have not had a lick of problems with it, and I don't use a foot switch right now. I have one, but I haven't added it to it. But I've always blown it out. Maybe I probably blow it out once a year.
Yeah,
and it's still going strong. So,
and then this is EX. Excalibur 30. This is the older model.
You got the old purple one.
Yep, the old purple one. Still works like a champ. Great saw. I've got to replace. This is finally just gave up on me. It keeps on breaking. It got shorter and shorter, so I've got to replace that on it. But variable speed. You'll notice you got the tension back here, and then this one is the parallel arm system also, like the Craftsman and like the Tradesman. It's here up on the front rather than the rear. Well, I take that back. It's not the motors up on the front. I'll turn around just a second. I'm sorry about that. I'll turn around and show you what I'm talking about in just a second. But the deceiving part is the motor is more forward, but there's a reason for that. But anyway, the tension is back here, and then you have the actual where you can apply it and take it off on the blade up front. So once you get your tension set back here, you can just add it and subtract it on the front of the saw like that. And it's variable speed.
Hey, Russ.
Yes.
This is going to be confusing, but that back knob is actually not tension.
This is not tension?
No, I know it sounds crazy, but trust me.
What is it?
The way those machines work is that's actually the adjustment to set the upper and lower arm parallel to each other. And that is actually the beginning of the adjustment to set how aggressive that machine is. And that's what takes this machine past the DeWalt and the Delta, is this machine, the blade front to back movement can actually be adjusted, which you can't do on the DeWalt and the Delta.
I've been tensioning this sucker all these years and never knew it.
Well, that's pretty typical. I think there's only 3 of us in the world that know that, because I explain this to people all the time in email. That what you do is you measure, put your I can't see your picture again, Russ. Let me get back to you. If you look at the distance between when it's tensioned up, the distance between the 2 arms front and back should be equal. In other words, those 2 arms should be parallel. Right. And what you do to start out with that adjustment is you use what you're calling the tensioning knob, and that will get you into your rough adjustment. And then to add or subtract runout, front to back runout on the blade, you actually adjust the motor, this is with the old one, so I'm not sure how you do it on this one, but all the new Excaliburs, the motor is mounted right there where his belly is. And you turn that motor to adjust how aggressive you want that machine to be.
Yeah, I'll flip this around to show you what I'm talking about. But anyway, it's variable speed.
Russ, before you do, can you keep the camera on you? Because while he's describing it, we're looking at speed, not the machine.
Yeah, just click on Russ's picture at the bottom, and it'll lock onto him.
Yeah, but the viewers don't have that option.
Oh, okay.
All right, I just clicked it on me.
All right.
But anyway, it's variable speed. It's controlled up here. And then it has the adjustment for the table. Tension knob. And I feel like an idiot now because I did not know this on the saw.
Well, you can still call it tension. It does change the tension, but that's not specifically what it's for.
Okay. And you'll notice that the motor's up front, but it's actually belt driven to the back here.
And you know what, Russ? This one's so old, you may not have that adjustment on this machine that I'm talking about. I'm trying to figure out how you would do it on this one.
Yeah, I was told this was the tension, that you set it here.
This machine's old enough that I may be telling you wrong. All the new Excaliburs, anything that's not this purple one, they all have the motor right there where the belt is on the other side, and the motor actually has bolts in it that you loosen and move it. And that one may be, I didn't know that they ever built an Excalibur that wasn't adjustable. But
I'm going to find out for sure. Wouldn't Ray at Seiko know about this?
Yeah, Ray will know.
Yeah. I'll send him a couple of pictures and ask him about it, because I was actually told it was the adjustment for the tension. So,
well, and if you go to Woodcraft or any of these other places and you ask them, that's what they'll tell you. They even on the new saws, they don't know.
Yeah.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
I'm just going to mention this to you so you can answer it later probably, but Jeff Robinson wants to open up a can of worms and say, what's the best production saw?
There's really not an answer to that, I don't think. I mean, any of these machines, the best production saw, I'll say it, is the Ahearn. I hate to say that because it's not my favorite machine in the world, but if you want a machine where you're going to cut 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, that machine will hold up to that without any problem at all. It's also a very precise cutting machine. It's built like a tank, but it's also going to cost you over $2,000.
Yeah, I have a Ahearn, and my biggest complaint about the Ahearn is the size of the table.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the Ahearn, but it's built like a tank.
Well, anyway, this is the my EX30, so it still works
And
great.
you can call that adjustment anything you want because it's your saw.
Yeah. When I first purchased it, I was told it was in working order, but there was a bearing, a couple of bearings that were bad in it I had to replace. And but other than that,
Donnie, you muted Russ for, I don't know why.
Who muted Russ?
Donna.
Donna.
Let me see if I can unmute him.
Donna.
Donna, you're fired.
I tried to unmute.
There, I unmuted him, I think.
I'm like, I can't. I hit enter and it did that.
No.
all right, Donna, you're fired.
That's
Okay.
Anyway, what was I going to say? Oh, two things. Here, let me push the camera back up where you can see me. Is that number one, I don't do big projects that much. So that's one of the reasons I got it just specifically. So if I ever wanted to do a big portrait or something, 2 foot by 3 foot or whatever, I could use this. That's the first thing. The second thing is I like to sit. So the DeWalt's sitting over here already down, and I use an office chair and I use it. So this is up on the big stand up really high. So I'd have to get a stool or something to stand or to sit on because I can't stand. I hurt my back years ago in the fire department, and I can't stand for those long periods of time with my sciatic nerve. So that's another thing I'd have to. And then in order to lower it to sit, I'm going to have to build another total table to lower it to sit on. And I just don't do that. I keep it over there. And if I ever want to use it, I've got it. And
also, if you're not using spiral blades, it's almost impossible to cut on that thing with flat blades because you're standing 2.5 foot away from the saw when you're making a turn.
Yep. Yeah. That's what I got it for, though, was spiral blades and portrait, or large portrait patterns or fretwork or something like that, where I was going to use spiral blades. But I have it, and I'm not going to get rid of it. I mean, so it works great now. I replaced the bearings in it, and it works fine. So I've got it. So, well, guys, what time are we talking about here? I can't see the.
It's 9:18.
9:18. Okay. I don't know about you, but I've learned a lot. I've learned out there's a possibility this is not attention.
I think I'm wrong, Russ. The more I look at it, because you don't have any way to do the adjustment that I'm talking about. If you go look at any of the, let me pull up a picture here if I can.
Well, I hope you're wrong, because I don't want to look like an idiot here.
I've never used that old machine there.
Oh, I know it's old. I'm old too, so just keep on talking, Stephen. You're going to work your way right out of not being invited back.
That's all right. Hang on, I'm going to share my screen again, and I'll show you what I'm talking about.
All right, here. Let me lock on you.
On all the newer Excaliburs and the Seiko machines and the King and all the different brands that are out there that are made by that Taiwanese company, the motor's mounted right here, and there's 3 bolts where I don't know if you can see my pointer.
Yeah, we can see them.
You take this knob right here and you set this parallel to the table, all right, with this knob. And then if you want to adjust in or out more or less aggressiveness, you loosen all these 3 bolts and you turn this motor. And you can set and measure the run out on the blade front to back. And that's what takes the Excalibur above and beyond the DeWalt and the Delta machine. That's the big deal, because you can make this a very precise cut. You can't get it totally straight up and down on the blade, but you can get it pretty close.
One thing too that I did want to mention, Steve, and you have one of them, and the new and you've been using it for a while, is the new Seiko scroll saw.
Right.
How do you like that one?
It is, of course, made by the same company that made the Excalibur. So all the same quality and everything, quality control is all the same. The biggest difference for me with the Seiko and why I like it over the other machines is the large table. I like that a lot. They have integrated the stand into the machine. And even though it's a pain in the butt to put together, to assemble, it actually helps reduce the vibration, which was part of the why they did that. So it's a very low vibration machine. Most machines, when you adjust the variable speed of the motor, you'll find a sweet spot, especially on the Delta and the DeWalt's. You'll find a sweet spot where the vibration seems to be at the best. On the Seiko, you don't have that. The vibration stays very even all the way through the whole range of variable speed, and that's nice. The table is covered with a magnetic sheet, and some people don't like it because it is a wear item, and probably every 1 or 2 years you're going to have to replace it. But I like it because it stays really slick. And I wax my tables on my scroll saws every month or two to keep them slick, just because I want that wood to move across that table without any extra effort on my part at all. I like that a lot. The negatives of the Seiko are, if you're a bowl cutter, you know, if you're cutting this kind of project right here, you know, where you're doing these bowls, the Seiko is not good for this kind of project because it does not tilt to the full 45 degrees in either direction. So if you want to cut fretwork or anything like that, it's a very precise machine, very low vibration, plenty of strength, and it's got the nice big large table. So is it head and shoulders above the Excalibur? No. But when you're talking about, you know, a difference of just $100 or so, I like the Seiko over the Excalibur. Plus the fact that right now you can't get the Excalibur because they're not selling them, although rumor is that's getting ready to change too. But I like the Seiko, but it's not head and shoulders above the Excalibur. It is head and shoulders above the DeWalt and the Delta.
Question real quick. What's the price comparable to the Excalibur on the Seiko? Is it?
The Seiko's like $979. Let me look at it real quick before I tell you wrong.
Wow.
Yeah, they're not cheap.
920. I'm sorry, it's $929. Is what he's calling his Super Saver Special because it's the first run. He's calling the list price $1159. I doubt it'll ever go back to that. I actually expected the machine to come out around $1,300. I was a little surprised that they were able to get this price down to where they did. And then they did it really without too many sacrifices. The reason the table doesn't tilt the full 45 degrees is because they wanted to increase the stroke of the blade so they could cut thicker woods, and that was why that sacrifice was made. For me personally, it's not a problem because I don't cut these bowls very often, and when I do, I just go cut it on my Excalibur or my Jet or some other machine. So I'm lucky enough to have, you know, more than one machine. But if you're Carol Rothman and your whole thing is to build these bowls, you wouldn't want a Seiko.
Right. So the price is not bad because that's about the $1,000 is what the EX21 was selling for.
Right. Yeah. Real close.
Right. So the price is not that bad. So yeah. Well, do we have any more questions on the panel first? Everybody's quiet as a mouse. Wheel.
I have nothing because I have yet to scroll saw yet, so I'm out.
We'll get you hooked before it's over with.
I can deal with that.
Matter of fact, I might have to see about finding you a scroll saw and just bringing it to you so I can get to see you down there.
Well, you're more than welcome to come by. You don't need to bring a scroll saw. I have that old Craftsman. That doesn't count. It's probably all rusted shut anyway. But I have a friend of mine gave me a Ryobi. Again, probably doesn't count either, but it's good for a starter.
Yeah.
You will be assimilated.
Do what, John?
You will be assimilated.
I will be
assimilated. Guys, I'm sorry I haven't been able to be as attentive in the chat over there tonight. And I know we have Florence Leedy out there, Randy Hutchcraft, Jeff Robinson, Dave Gatton, my friend, has been out there, Dave Hart. Anybody else got any names they want to? Tommy G's been out there in the chat. Everybody's
Heirloom game calls.
Heirloom game call.
Yeah.
Steve Nealon is out there. Patrick was out there earlier.
Jeff Robinson.
TJ was out there.
Yeah, he's disappeared. We got 50 people watching.
Yeah, Jeff Robinson, Heirloom Game Calls. I'm be up. Joseph Poindexter. Hey, Joseph. Joseph watches me every week over on Wednesday nights over on Twitch.
Joseph actually has a question for Steve. If he would do a video on how to adjust the EX.
I think I may have already done that. I'll have to look, but if not, yeah, I can. I can do it on the Seiko. I probably won't go back and do videos on the Excalibur anymore, unless they start selling it again, just because it's not, you know, I've got a lot of videos up there on it already, and it's not really relevant right now. Although there is a pretty good rumor that the Excalibur's coming back.
Chris Nealon's out there. Randy Hutchcraft said, "Hey Russ." Hey Randy. Chris Glitzo, Dan Inglewood, Aussie Man 77181. They're all out there. Thank you very much, guys, for being. Like I said, we've been kind of busy. I especially wanted to kind of show the internal workings of some of these saws to a lot of y'all out there. I get a lot of questions, a lot of emails, and I know Steve Good does also, people asking suggestions on buying scroll saws. And so I wanted to definitely kind of touch on that. Hopefully I can point them to this show and say, hey, go over there and watch that show, and then that'll answer some of your questions. But yeah, I get, I don't know, 15, 20 emails a week, people asking me about my recommendations on a scroll saw, and they're asking me about the, you know, porta cable and this and that one. So I've been thinking about doing this for a while, about the anatomy and showing it, especially since I had the Delta already tore apart. So that was kind of an easy one there to show off. But I appreciate you guys. I'm sorry.
Hey, Russ,
yes.
Let me show you one more thing. Click on my screen again. I want to show you one thing.
Yep.
Over at Sheila Landry's site, SheilaLandryDesigns.com, she has the adjustment for adjusting the Excalibur, and she did a really good job with pictures. And if you look, this is exactly what I was talking about. It really doesn't require a video. There's enough pictures here to show you exactly what she's doing. But she's using the ruler to measure the parallelism of the upper arm to the table, front and back. That's what those two measurements are, that she's taken there are. Then she's showing that you use that knob in the back to change that to where they're as close to parallel as you can get them. And then she's looking at the blade, the run out on the blade, front to back in this picture. And then here it's showing those bolts I was talking about that you loosen and you turn to reduce this gap that the blade moves back and forth. And if you can't get it where you want it, you can actually take these bolts all the way out, rotate the motor 270 degrees or whatever you have to do, and put the bolts back in the next set of holes, and you can keep making that adjustment. And you can get that Excalibur or the Seiko down to really close to an Eclipse type of up and down movement. You can get it. Now, if you do that, it makes the machine cut slower. And that's kind of the drawback to the DeWalt and the Delta, is they are both aggressive cutting machines, so they cut fast, but they're not very precise, and you can adjust it. And again, this is how you do that adjustment right here.
Right.
Really.
Very good. Very good. A lot of great information out there tonight, guys. I hope you are able or have been able to take something away from this tonight, and we've been able to help you. That's about the biggest thing that I try to do on these shows when we do this kind of stuff. I know sometimes we just do interviews like we did with Bill Lutz. That was a lot of fun the other day. That guy's crazy. He was a ballerina. And ballerina and woodworking have the same thing. I think they're the same way. That guy was just like, I was sitting there. I almost busted out laughing right in front of everybody, but I kind of held it back. But anyway, I try to bring stuff that are really interesting and really I think will help y'all out there, especially make a decision when you're buying a scroll saw. If you ask me the best bang for your buck, and I'll go and ask Steve what he thinks too, but the best bang for your buck, especially if you can catch them on sale, is the DeWalt DW788 or the Delta.
Could not agree more.
Yeah, those are the best bang for your buck. Catch them on sale. I mean, just hold on to your money just a little bit longer, and when you buy it, you'll be so much happier that you did that. So,
If you can get it for $299, you're stealing it. Because if you look at the difference between the Porter cable and the DeWalt, and you're only talking an extra $100, it's easily a $500 better machine.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right. Anybody else have anything else before we close out tonight? Once again, everybody's quiet. This group, man, I'm gonna have to. What I'm gonna have to do to get y'all prodded and poked again.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, but nothing happens.
I thought you were trying to think because I smelled smoke over here. So anyway, guys, I appreciate you. Thank you very much, Chris, Donna, Javi, Jim Bashirs, John, and Paul, and very much thank you for the wealth of information, Mr. Steve Good.
Thanks, Russ, for having me on.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Anytime that I'm doing anything like this is the man that I go to because his wealth of knowledge on these situations or on this kind of stuff is like vast, and I do appreciate him very, very much. And I appreciate being able to call you my friend.
Same here.
Guys, thank you very much. Michael is out there, Dave Hart, Robert Evans, Tom Spillane. We've had a lot of people watching tonight. It was like 50-something earlier, which I really appreciate. And thank Tommy G posted out there a little bit earlier. He said he's still in a lot of pain. The pain's not over, and it's still in a lot of pain. He's just learning to deal with it. And that's the sad thing. That's kind of like me with my back. I have a pinched sciatic nerve, and I have good days and bad days. So I know what you're talking about, Tommy, but it's actually good to see you back out in the chat. And you were also saying that you were going to be producing some videos here pretty quick. Mark Lindsay's out there. Hey, Mark, how you doing? Guys, we only got one thing left to do, and y'all know what that is. And good night. We thank you for watching. Just give me sawdust, lots of sawdust all around me and everywhere. I like it flying all around my shop and even in my beard and hair. Good night, everybody. God bless you.
All right, boys and girls. Remember, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Not all.